Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 1990's Represent. We're still in our first cycle of 1995, and on this episode, we're talking about Goldeneye. Like an awesome James Bond film, Pierce Brosnan's first appearance as 007. Still holds up incredibly well. Some of the green screen looks a little bit dated, but other than that, I think this is an amazing James Bond film. This is the first James Bond film I was able to actually see in theaters, because I think I would have been like 9 years old when License to Kill came out, so I wasn't quite old enough to see that. But went with my friend to see this one. I actually think we had to wait until 1996 to see it. Like it was like in January, so it was like maybe like a month and a half after it came out. But yeah, we saw it because the theater where we saw it at used to either never get certain movies or it would get stuff fairly late. So it got Goldeneye, like I said, like about a month and a half after it came out. But I remember seeing this with him, and it's an awesome, awesome film. It was on streaming, I want to say last year because I watched it, I want to say like a year ago. But don't think it's available just to stream now. I think you had to either buy it or rent it. So I ended up just breaking out the DVD to check it out. Got some notes here about the movie, and then we're just going to discuss the movie, plot points, stuff like that, and some kind of like observations and thoughts about it. Let me just go ahead and get this notes open here. Let's see where we are. Here we are. Goldeneye. So Goldeneye, first released November 17th, 1995. That's in the U.S., or November 24th in the UK. Kind of interesting because the whole James Bond series is a British film series. It's kind of interesting that it opened in the United States before opening in the UK, or they didn't have like a simultaneous release. This is the 17th James Bond film. There was a 6-year gap between this film, or License to Kill, and this film, which felt like at the time like a very long time. 6 years now, to me, doesn't seem like it's all that long. But to kind of put it in perspective, I think when you're younger, time seems to go slower. So like a year to like somebody that's like 10 definitely feels longer than a year to somebody that's like 30 or something like that. But when License to Kill came out, that would have came out when I was probably going into like the third grade. Because I think it came out in the summer, maybe the summer of that year. I don't recall exactly when it came out. But I think it was 1989, so I was either still in the second grade or going into third grade, or it was like between those grades. And then by the time Goldeneye came out, I had finished elementary school, finished middle school / junior high, and was already starting high school. So it just felt like it was a very long time between films. This is also apparently the first James Bond film to not utilize any kind of like material from Ian Fleming's novels, aside from like the character of James Bond, of course. So that was, I think, very interesting. And it's the first one of these films to be set after the kind of the end of the Cold War. The opening of the movie takes place in the 80s, but the main part of the movie takes place after the Soviet Union has been, the collapse of the Soviet Union and all of that. Timothy Dalton initially had signed on to do 3 films, and I think they had some kind of script ready to go, but the movie just kind of fell into development hell and was never made. Apparently, Pierce Brosnan was approached, or was they wanted Pierce Brosnan to play James Bond after Roger Moore, but Pierce Brosnan was on Remington Steele and wasn't able to do Goldeneye due to his commitments to Remington Steele. So he wasn't able to do that. So they had to wait until Timothy Dalton's contract expired before he could play the character in Goldeneye. Some amazing characters in this film. James Bond is great. Pierce Brosnan is awesome in this one. This is probably my favorite of the Pierce Brosnan films. I think I go Goldeneye, and then I think The World Is Not Enough, and then Tomorrow Never Dies after that, and then what was it? Die Another Day being last. Die Another Day is pretty bad even for a James Bond film. I think it just was not very good. But lately, I've actually been enjoying Tomorrow Never Dies a little bit more. It's definitely more over. It's probably the most over the top, at least like plot wise, of the Brosnan films. Maybe not Die Another Day, but like I think it's like the whole thing about Tomorrow Never Dies, about the villain basically being like a Rupert Murdoch kind of style, like news, like news station owner, basically trying to create World War III in order to cover it, is a pretty. It's kind of over the top, but it works pretty well. But I would say definitely Goldeneye is my top of the Brosnan films, and then I think it's probably tied between Tomorrow Never Dies and The World Is Not Enough. I slightly like The World Is Not Enough better, and then, like I said, Die Another Day is just terrible, unfortunately. It's just overall bad. I remember seeing it when it came out and didn't really enjoy it. But the other characters in this film that really shine in this movie are Sean Bean is Alec Trevelyan, and Famke, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, Jensen as Xenia Onatop. Those are basically the two main villains of the film. I guess there is a third, which is General Oromov. But basically, it's Alec Trevelyan and Xenia. Alec Trevelyan being the villain, Xenia being like the main kind of henchman or henchwoman. And the fact that she basically kills people by basically just like wrapping her legs around them and then squeezing them to death is amazing. She does an incredible job with the role. This is the first movie I saw Sean Bean in as well, and he has some incredibly good dialogue, especially to James Bond when it's revealed that Alec Trevelyan is actually the villain of the film. Because in the opening, he is working with James Bond. He's presumed dead, and shows up again later, about like halfway through the film, as the main villain who wants to steal Goldeneye and all that. There's some excellent dialogue between him and James Bond, especially when they're in that kind of like statue graveyard where you have all these kind of like communist statues that are just they've been basically taken down and are stored in this basically, like I said, a statue graveyard, and you have some just iconic moments between them. Some amazing cinematography, especially in that statue graveyard, and also like the opening sequence is incredible. Of course, it plays well into the GoldenEye video game that came out a couple years later. It's one of my favorite James Bond intros or intro little vignettes because all the James Bond movies generally have this thing where it's not always connected to the main plot. Sometimes it's just like a cool action sequence. This one connects in because it shows. I think it's like in like maybe like the mid '80s. It's Bond and Trevelyan doing a mission together, and Alec Trevelyan gets killed, and then James Bond does this stuff. The intro is amazing because he got this chase on the runway. He dives off, jumps into a plane, and flies away. Cuts away to Tina Turner's iconic GoldenEye score. So what else do we have here? This is also Judi Dench's first appearance as M. So first female to play the character as well, and she played that character all the way up through Skyfall. So basically was there for the entirety of the Pierce Brosnan run and about like half of the Daniel Craig run. I think there's two Daniel Craig movies after her character died and left the series. This movie had a $60 million budget and grossed around $356 million globally, which is pretty good. And now we're going to get into our little plot wrap up. So the plot starts with 007 and 006, so Bond and Trevelyan, infiltrating this Russian chemical weapons facility. And it's not really clear what the mission is. I think they're basically just there to blow up the facility because they set mines in the thing to blow it up. Basically, like 007 does this amazing bungee jump off of the dam and then gets into the facility. He meets Trevelyan there. They sneak into they get into the kind of area where they can have all the kind of gas canisters stored. They're getting the bombs or mines set up, and then an alarm goes off. Guards rush the room. They break into it. 006 gets killed in the process. James Bond changes the timers from 6 minutes to 3. That's an important little plot point later on. And then he escapes through an amazing chase on this runway where he's trying to get onto a plane. He gets into the plane, but he throws the pilot out, and he also falls out with him. Gets a motorcycle, chases it down, dives off like a cliff, on the motorcycle, and then gets into the plane and flies it away as the facility is exploding. It cuts into Tina Turner's Goldeneye, iconic Goldeneye song, and like music video, like little thing they do there. And then we cut to present day, so like 1995, and you see 007 driving around in the, I think it's a DB5. I think is the Aston Martin. It's the one that shows up iconically in Goldfinger. It's probably best used in Goldfinger, but it shows up in other movies too. But he's driving around with a psychologist who's there to evaluate him, and they're just driving through. Our introduction to Xenia Onatopp in, like, I think it's like a Ferrari. They have like a little like chase race down this hill. There's like a bike race going on at the same time. Xenia gets away, or Bond basically lets her get away because the psychologist is like, "I damn it, like stop this car at once," is what she says. And then he basically starts hitting on her. They have some champagne. Cuts to I think they're in Monte Carlo at like a casino. They do some gambling with Xenia, and you see her getting onto this yacht. Bond is like spying on her, and then it's revealed that it's like she's kind of with the admiral, but basically kills the admiral like by wrapping her legs around him and crushing him. And I think somebody impersonates the admiral because you see somebody as that character's getting killed reaches in and grabs a guy's ID out of his like pocket. But they get out to the thing, and basically the whole plan is to hijack this. I think it's called a Tiger helicopter, and it's supposed to be immune from like electromagnetic radiation. So Xenia helps steal the helicopter. It gets away, and then it cuts to the Goldeneye facility in, I think it's in Serbia, Russia, where they're basically like, it's kind of like an not underground, but like a very classified, top secret kind of like project. They're working at the computers there, and Boris is there. Boris is great because he's always like, "I'm invincible." Great little, great character. Alan Cumming plays it's a bit character, a small character, but it's a really cool role for him. But he's like a computer program. He goes out to have a cigarette. The helicopter comes down. Everybody at the facility basically is killed once the Goldeneye is stolen. They set it off. It blows up the entire facility, and then it cuts back to MI6 where they are discussing the. Apparently, like they were like, well, we don't think the Russians have the finance or the technology to actually like do this, so they ruled it out. But it ended up being an actual thing. Bond gets tasked with finding out who stole it, and Fly. Also, Desmond Llewellyn. Desmond. I'm not going to pronounce his last name correctly. Probably. He plays Q, of course. Played all the way up through The World Is Not Enough, because then he unfortunately passed away in a motor accident like later that year. But he's in there, obviously gives Bond his car and all his equipment. Unfortunately, the car that he gives him, it's used in like one scene, and none of the stuff is really used. Like, it's apparently supposed to have like missile launchers behind the headlights, which you never actually see, unfortunately. But he ends up getting set up going to Russia. He gets paired up with Jack Wade, who I think the character was called Whitaker in The Living Daylights. He played the villain in that movie. Joe Don Baker is the actor. He plays Jack Wade, Jack Wade, I think, is the character's name in Goldeneye, and he shows up again in Tomorrow Never Dies. But he's kind of Bond's CIA like contact. They say the only lead is this guy named Zukoski, played by Ronnie Coltrane, and he basically like sets up a meeting with him, and then in exchange for some services, he tells him where to meet Yanis, who ends up being Alex Trevelyan. Cuts to a hotel where Bond is basically swimming. Xenia tries to roll on him there. He gets the better of her and gets like basically like, and she takes him to Yanis, and then that's where Bond and Trevelyan meet each other again for the first time in like, what was it, like 9 years or something like that. Alex Trevelyan's like face is all scarred up because he was in the building when it was like exploding because of Bond changing the timers, and he's like makes a line. There's a line where he's like, "God didn't give me this face, you did by switching the timers from 6 minutes to 3." But then Bond and the Natalia get captured or are captured. They're in the helicopter is about to explode. They escape that. They get picked up by the Russian military and are being held captive, basically. The defense minister basically is like, "How should we execute you because of all this?" And then Natalia tells the defense minister that it was Ourumov that stole the Goldeneye sat in the Goldeneye and killed everyone. And then there's a huge chase through the military archives. Natalia gets captured again by Ormov, but then Bond does this awesome chase through St. Petersburg on a tank. One of like the movie. This movie has some incredible just action set pieces. This tank chase being one of them. I say the facility fight being another one of them. Some stuff on the train being great, and then also like all the stuff on like the satellite cradle, which we get to at the end of the film. But yeah, she gets captured again, and then they're on a train. Bond basically parks the tank on the train tracks, derails it, and then gets on. There's a shootout where he kills Oromov, and then Xenia and Trevelyan escape. And he's like, another great line from Trevelyan is, they figure out where they're going. They're going to Cuba, but there's the train that they're on is set to explode because now it's just Natalia and 007. So Trevelyan says, "I set the timer for the same. I set the timer for 6 minutes, the same 6 minutes you gave me." Natalia's like, "What's that mean?" And Bond is like, "We had 3 minutes." So they get out. They go to Cuba. They're driving around. This is the only scene where we see like I think it's like a BMW. Like I said, it's this car. Like a lot of times you see a car, like the car in the next Bond film in Tomorrow Never Dies was just an amazing car because it was like Bond could like remote control it, and there was like a great sequence in like a parking garage. But the BMW in this movie, I think it's a BMW, it's kind of a little underwhelming with just like they kind of are like, oh yeah, you got Stinger missiles behind the headlights, and of course we never see it. But Jack Wade meets up again with Bond that gives him the plane to help find the satellite. There's another amazing line from Pierce Brosnan where Natalia's asking, he's like, so this Trevelyan was a friend of yours and now he's your enemy and you will kill him. And Bond's like, yeah, in a word, yes. She's like, how can you be so cold? And Bond says, it's what keeps me alive. And her response is, no, it's what keeps you alone. Just some very, like the script work in this film, like the dialogue specifically is just like peak 007, I think. But after that, they basically find the satellite because basically a missile comes up, blows up their plane. There's a fight with Xenia where she comes down and tries to squeeze Bond, and then he basically like unclips the gun, shoots the helicopter that she's in, kills the pilot, and Natalia is still like chained to the helicopter or hooked to it. So as the helicopter's pulling her up, it pulls her between like these two, like a tree that like has these, it kind of splits like that. So she's kind of like getting like just yanked and gets killed. Another classic one-liner is after she's dead, 007 looks at Natalia and she's like, oh yeah, she always did enjoy a good squeeze. And they find the satellite or the antenna system. They go inside. Bond gets captured, but Natalia is able to reprogram the satellite to basically like re-enter orbit and just burn up. But the whole plan is basically to have London be the target. So we're going to steal a bunch of money from the Bank of London and then detonate the Goldeneye, which will then send an electromagnetic pulse down, destroying any records of the transactions. And like Trevelyan mentions, like it's just going to destroy like bank records, like stock market, it'll destroy like land, like registries, like all this stuff will get. He basically says it's London is going to re-enter the Stone Age because basically all this stuff is just going to go away. There's going to be like they're going to mess with the stock market, the banking systems, like all that kind of stuff, like criminal records, what have you. But Natalia reprograms the satellite, and then Boris is basically like trying to get access to it again. And then the thing is like he's like, can Boris break these codes? And she's like, possibly. So then Bond has to go up to the satellite to actually destroy the transmitter to actually totally stop it. Like definitely like Natalia's thing slowed it down, but Bond needs to go up to up there to actually disable it. Trevelyan follows him up there. There's an awesome fight between the two. Like the physicality of the fights between Bond and Trevelyan are like really visceral. They're really like great to watch, and you can just like tell like they're like definitely like trying to like kill each other because there's a part where like Bond grabs just like a handful of chain and just like throws it at Trevelyan's head. Trevelyan dodges it, of course. But yeah, just like a very brutal fight between the two of them, which ends up on them hanging off this ladder where Trevelyan is actually like slides down, knocks Bond down, and then Bond is like hanging on to like the last rung, and you just see Trevelyan like toying with him by putting his foot on it and then stomping on it so he falls. But then, of course, the end of the film, Bond gets the upper hand, knocks Trevelyan off, but before letting him fall, he grabs his leg, and he's like, Trevelyan's like, for England, James, and Bond is like, no, for me. Lets him go. Trevelyan falls. The satellite explodes and crushes Trevelyan. Trevelyan's death is actually like pretty brutal because he survives the fall, which you would think it would probably like straight up kill him. It definitely breaks his leg because you see his leg is all like twisted in like a weird angle. He probably would have died like eventually, even if the satellite didn't land on him. But like it blows up, and you just see it comes crashing down on him, crushing him. Boris actually survives and does his "I'm invincible" thing again, right? But then like liquid nitrogen canisters explode. They coat him in liquid nitrogen, and then he's basically just a frozen statue going like that. But and then basically like Jack Wade shows back up, and that's the end of the film. It's an awesome movie. I had watched it recently, like I said, like last year, but it's always a good. There's always a reason to watch Goldeneye because it's always a blast. I think Pierce Brosnan did an excellent job as 007 in this. He kind of has some of the like charisma of Connery, but also the physicality of Dalton. So I think he's a little bit of a good like hybrid, because I think like Roger Moore is definitely the campiest out of them, while up to this point Dalton was like the most serious. So I think, like I said, Brosnan reminds me of like a mix between Connery and Dalton. I definitely feel like Daniel Craig is probably the most serious out of them now, as far as like how like they portray the character. But Brosnan definitely had like a good balance between like being funny but then also being serious. I don't really know if I'm explaining it very well, but that's how I feel about Brosnan's role as James Bond. I think he was always, I feel like the only one movie of his that I didn't enjoy was I keep forgetting the name of it. Die Another Day. So Die Another Day was the only one of his movies I didn't enjoy. He was fine in it, but I thought there was like all the stuff in that movie I didn't like. But the other two movies that he's in, or the other two that are good, Tomorrow Never Dies, World Is Not Enough, also very good. But yeah, Goldeneye, it's always a fun movie to watch. If you haven't seen it, I would definitely highly recommend it. Definitely feels like it was like definitely a long time coming when it came out. Because I remember, like I said, I was 9 years old when License to Kill came out, and I was 15 when this one came out. And like I said, 6 years isn't a huge amount of time, but back when you're like between like basically, as I putting it into context, I went through, finished elementary school, finished middle school, and had started high school by between those two movies. But that's gonna do it for this video. We'll be back again in a few days with a video game video for 1995, and then after that we'll be moving into 1996. But that's going to do it for now, so remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. We'll see you again next time. Thanks again for watching. Take care and have a good one. See ya.